My husband had a white moonlighted concubine who entered the palace but could not conceive. To help her win the emperor's favor, he went so far as to secretly send me to the imperial bedchamber. The child I bore became the imperial consort's prince, while I was burned alive. And my dowry was plundered to the last penny. When I returned to the moment I conceived the imperial heir, I gladly walked into the trap my husband had set. Only this time, it is they who will die. Main text. My lord, what are you doing? Fresh from childbirth. I collapsed weakly to the ground, watching helplessly as my husband, Sin Lin, carried my son away. Gone was his usual refined composure. His entire face was twisted into a savage grin. With this child, Xiaoer will be able to secure her footing in the harem. My heart sank not only because the Xiaoer spoke of was His Majesty's most favored consort way, but also because he actually intended to use my own child to corrupt the imperial bloodline. Sin Lin, have you thought this through? If this is exposed, it's a capital offense punishable by the extermination of 9 generations of your family. To my surprise, Sin Lin showed no fear. Instead, his laughter grew even more maniacal. The child you bore is His Majesty's flesh and blood to begin with. What crime have I committed? I thought I must have misheard him. As a wife of a minister, how could I possibly have His Majesty's child? Sin Lin told me the truth without any pretense. At last year's Mid-Autumn Palace banquet, Xiaoer and I worked together. We slipped a sedative into your and His Majesty's wine. Then had you taken to Xiaoer's chambers. Before dawn, we brought you back to the mansion without anyone noticing. Humph. If it weren't for His Majesty's unique constitution which prevents his bloodline from being tainted and the fact that Xiaoer needs a prince to vie for favor yet is unable to bear children, why would I have kept you alive until now? So, Sin Lin colluded with the imperial consort to turn me into a tool for bearing children. I struggled to my feet, intending to confront him, but Sin Lin stepped out of the room, a sinister smile curving his lips. See how kind I am to you. At least I'm letting you die with a clear understanding. Zhou Jingshu, thank you for bearing a prince for Xiaoer. When you're down there, don't blame me. With that, he slammed the door shut and locked it from the outside, just as I was straining with all my might to escape. Thick smoke began seeping into the room, accompanied by flames that spread rapidly. It wasn't enough that he used Mei He actually intended to silence me by killing me. But no matter how furious I was powerless to escape the sea of fire. All I could do was make a solemn vow before I died. If I could do it all over again, I would make them pay for their crimes with blood tenfold. I swear I will not rest until they are sent to hell. The searing pain of my flesh burning had not yet subsided when a hypocritical, exaggerated laugh snapped me back to consciousness. Oh my! Look at that pointy belly of yours, it must be a boy. The speaker was none other than my mother-in-law. The Sin family wasn't particularly wealthy to begin with. It was only because my father thought Sin Lin was steady and honest that he was willing to marry me off to him, to ensure I wouldn't suffer any hardships. He even provided a substantial dowry enough to keep me well-fed and clothed for the rest of my life. My mother-in-law is a shrewd woman. She finds excuses to squeeze money out of me every other day. Out of a sense of propriety, I can't bring myself to refuse. And so I've ended up supporting her, now an old woman decked out in gold and silver. I glanced at my mother-in-law, then looked down at my own belly, which had only recently begun to show. Heaven has iced it, actually let me be reborn. Seeing my eyes welling up with tears, my mother-in-law assumed I was happy at the thought of becoming a mother. I exchanged a glance with Sin Lin, who stood nearby. Greed and scheming nearly overflowed from his pea-sized eyes. So she knew about Sin Lin's plan too. Mother and son had been sweet-talking and pampering me with meticulous care, all the while plotting to use my dowry after my death to bribe high officials and support the imperial consort, climbing the ranks with ease. Why should I be their stepping stone? Since they love putting on a show so much, I'll play along until the very end. Pulling myself together, I placed a hand on my belly and smiled gently. Yes, it's only been 4 or 5 months, and the baby is already kicking me. It must be a mischievous little boy. It's just that my appetite hasn't been very good lately. I can't seem to eat anything. Before I could finish, my mother-in-law grew anxious. If anything were to happen to the child in my womb, Sinlin's high office and generous salary and her own glorious golden years would all be lost. That's why she values this child more than her own grandchild. That simply won't do. Even if you won't eat, the baby must. Whether it's delicacies from land and sea or rare game, as long as you can stomach it, I'll get it for you. How generous of her. But wouldn't all those expenses throughout the Tsin household be paid for out of my dowry? Using my money to play the Good Samaritan, and I'm supposed to thank her for it. Suppressing my nausea, I deepened my smile. Come to think of it, I'd really like to try the first-class steamed snow plum and the golden broth 8 treasures at the Drunken Fragrance Pavilion. These 2 dishes require extremely intricate preparation and are truly priceless. Since they knew the money wasn't coming out of their own pockets, they agreed without hesitation. Just as Sinlin was about to head to the Drunken Fragrance Pavilion himself, I casually remarked, "Oh, right. My father knows I'm pregnant and plans to come see me. I reckon he should be arriving any day now." Sinlin and my mother-in-law froze. My father is the imperial tutor. Had it not been for a sudden illness back then, he wouldn't have retired so early. Yet His Majesty has never forgotten his teachings and even had a special ancestral hall built for him. Such a revered imperial tutor. And yet he has a fiery temper. If he were to find out that these 2 bloodsuckers have drained more than half of my dowry, the Tsin family wouldn't just be unable to survive in the capital, it would be a miracle if they managed to keep their heads. Therefore, Sinlin had no choice but to find a way to cover the visible shortfall first. He dared not spend a single coin more. Seeing him standing there motionless, I feigned confusion. Is my husband displeased? Is it that you don't want to see my father? Or that you don't want me to enjoy a good meal? Sinlin's mouth twitched, and he forced a strained, awkward smile. Not at all. I was just thinking about how to entertain my father-in-law. My lady, please wait here. I'll head to the Drunken Fragrance Pavilion right away. That trip alone would burn through at least 1,000 tales of his secret savings, enough to make him wince for quite a while. After we'd eaten and drunk our fill, I returned to my room to rest. Before leaving, I told Sinlin that starting today, he would have to spend the night in the side chamber, citing my pregnancy-related insomnia as the reason. No sooner had I shooed him out than he was already hiding in a corner with my mother-in-law, plotting in secret. My mother-in-law was still fuming over the silver spent on those 2 dishes Sinlin had ordered, stomping her feet in anger. What kind of filthy creature is she to deserve spending the Tsin family's money? If you ask me, we might as well go all the way and kill that old bastard first. Sinlin agreed. I've obtained some rare poison that the coroner won't be able to detect. Once Zhou Jingshu gives birth, we'll send her to join her father. I slipped back into my room and wrote a letter to my father. Not only did I reveal the true nature of the Tsin family, but I also urged him to remain calm. I had a plan of my own. The next day, I had the elderly maid who'd come with me as part of my dowry take inventory of all my wedding trousseau. I kept only enough silver for daily food and clothing. The rest I sent to Chongqing Bank. It was the largest money house in the capital. Wealthy families, whether buying and selling estates and properties, or wanting to use their surplus savings to build dye houses, factories, or kilns, could all invest their money there to get a piece of the pie in these various ventures. However, whether the money invested turned a profit or a loss depended entirely on luck and one's own skill. I staked all my money on a barren mountain in the southern frontier, ostensibly just to plant some golden thread nanmu trees. But only I knew that in a few months, a gold mine would be unearthed on that barren mountain. As luck would have it, at the money house, I also ran into Lady Qian, the wife of Minister Pei of the Ministry of Personnel. We're on good terms, and seeing how much I'd invested, she teased me. Your husband, Minister Tsin, has been getting quite close to my husband lately. We had quite a few drinking sessions together. You aren't, by any chance, upset that he's been neglecting you while running around outside? So you've emptied his little silver stash out of spite, are you? Though spoken in jest, her words were actually a subtle reminder. Sunlin intended to bribe Lord Pei. So she was urging me to leave some money behind to spare my husband any embarrassment. I smiled and replied, his little silver vault. I could never empty it. Just as Lady Qian had predicted. The moment I returned home, Sunlin came storming in. Zhou Jingshu. What do you think you're doing? You've transferred all your dowry without a word. Oh, you want the Sun family to starve. Setting aside the laws of our dynasty which state that a woman's dowry is her private property and her husband's family may not appropriate it. Just judging by the accusatory tone of his outburst, isn't he afraid I'll file a complaint with my father? Seeing things were taking a turn for the worse, my mother-in-law hurriedly pulled Sunlin back. What are you ranting about? It's Jingshu's family's money. Where she chooses to spend it is entirely her own business. Isn't it? Sunlin, who'd just been pinched hard on the arm, finally calmed down. His eyes darted about, and he resumed his usual demeanor of a gentlemanly gentleman. I was just getting carried away just now. Jingshu, I know my father-in-law has always thought I'm not good enough for you. I want to prove myself, climb to a higher official post, and achieve greater things. But you know how the bureaucracy works. To accomplish anything significant, you've got to spend some silver. How much do you have left? Why don't we? Oh, husband, you're too late. I feigned reluctance. You've had it rough these past years. I've been covering most of the household expenses from my dowry, with father arriving soon. I was worried he might ask about the silver in my dowry. He might think that Sun family is hiding money and shamelessly living off my dowry. Hearing this, Sunlin and my mother-in-law's faces darkened. I stifled a laugh and continued, we can't make up for this shortfall overnight. We'll just have to start a business to save face. Sunlin wiped the sweat from his brow. Still unwilling to give up. I'll handle this matter myself. Why don't you just get the money back first? I really need it urgently. Don't you know the rules at Chongqing store? My husband, once money is invested, you can't get it back even if you change your mind. And you'll never be able to do business with them again. My husband, how do you plan to make up for the shortfall in my dowry? Sunlin was rendered speechless by my question and could only stifle his anger as he stormed off. My mother-in-law wasn't as calculating as he was. Seeing her son suffer a silent defeat, she shot me a scornful glare. You're a woman instead of taking care of your pregnancy. All you think about is money, money, money. Your belly's getting big now. You'd better behave yourself from now on. I obediently agreed. But after she left, I watched her retreating figure and sneered coldly. A village woman who wears my money on her back, how dare she lecture me? The humiliation your son is about to suffer is yet to come. Without silver to curry favor, Sunlin could only probe for Magistrate Pei's preferences. He would either host poetry gatherings to appraise calligraphy and paintings, or casually mention rare antiques and artifacts. I suppose he was hoping to pick out a suitable gift from my collection of antiques and calligraphy. And you know what? Magistrate Pei does indeed have a favorite jade, specifically rare vases of various shapes. And as it happens, my dowry included a pair of linked white jade vases with twin handles. But Sunlin was wary of my father and didn't dare steal the vases outright, so he had a pair of fakes made. When I went to check, what was displayed there had long since been replaced with cheap knockoffs. Even though he'd succeeded in getting his hands on them, I couldn't help but burst out laughing, because the pair of vases he'd stolen were also fakes. They were nothing more than a decoy I deliberately left for Sunlin. You can imagine the humiliation Sunlin would face when Magistrate Pei discovered the vases were imitations and flew into a rage. Sure enough, that evening, Sunlin returned to the mansion looking utterly dejected and listless. The moment he saw me, his pitiful, beaten-down expression vanished instantly, replaced by the haughty air of a household head. He paid no heed to his mother-in-law's inquiries and rushed straight to me. When he saw the faint smile playing on my lips, he suddenly realized something. Zhou Jingshu, you wouldn't have facing his shock and suspicion. I tested the waters cautiously. Has something troubled you, my husband? If you'd prefer some peace and quiet, perhaps I should hold off on sharing my good news for now. Sinlin froze. What good news? My father is on his way here. Isn't he? He met a traveling merchant from the western regions on the road and bought me all sorts of rare trinkets. You mentioned last time that you wanted to make connections in official circles. So I planned to give all those things to you. Sinlin recalled his father-in-law's imposing presence once more, and with his eyes on those treasures, he immediately put on a fawning expression. My lady thinks of me so deeply. With a wife like this, what more could a husband ask for? I shyly lowered my eyes, not wanting to see his sickening fake smile and feel nauseous. Just then, a maidservant entered carrying the pair of white jade vases and placed them on the flower table. The moment Sinlin saw them, he snapped like a cat whose paw had been stepped on, shouting harshly, "Who told you to bring these things?" The maid was so startled she nearly dropped them. She hurriedly knelt to beg for mercy. I told her to leave first. Then rubbed my belly with a frown. Husband, what are you doing? What if you scare the baby? Sinlin hastened to apologize, though his peripheral vision never left the pair of white jade vases. My lady, I recall these vases are worth a fortune. Such precious objects, what if they were to break? We should put them in the storeroom for safekeeping. I covered my mouth and laughed lightly, unconcerned. I forgot to tell you, my husband, last year, my father acquired some top-quality white jade and wanted to have another pair of linked vases made. So I sent my pair back to my parents' home for the jade craftsman to study. This pair is a replica, worthless trinkets, just for display. Sinlin's expression nearly gave way. He had to grit his teeth to keep a smile on his face. For the next few days, Sinlin returned home with a face as dark as iron. I asked Lady Qian about it, and she told me that Magistrate Pei hadn't noticed anything amiss at first. He had invited many friends over specifically to show off the vases, but one of them saw through the deception, leaving him utterly humiliated. Consequently, Magistrate Pei not only repeatedly humiliated Sinlin in front of their colleagues but also fabricated numerous pretexts to lodge formal complaints and impeach him. Court officials, unwilling to offend Magistrate Pei, all kept their distance from Sinlin. He was now like a rat in the street, regarded as a plague wherever he went. Unable to bear the gossip any longer, Sinlin had no choice but to stay home, claiming illness, though he resented me for swapping the white jade bottle. He couldn't very well take it out on me, seeing him suffer such a humiliation while still having to speak to me in a soft, soothing voice. My mother-in-law's words grew even more cutting. Other women either manage the household or help their husbands climb the ranks and amass wealth. You, on the other hand, just lays around at home like a sow. Tell me, what good is it for my son to have married you? I said nothing, but a single glance was enough to make Sinlin stand up for me, as if, as long as my father didn't arrive, he wouldn't dare to act out of line. My mother-in-law was also afraid of offending my father, so she smacked her lips and apologized to me. I'm just a country woman. I'm used to speaking bluntly. Don't take it to heart. But originally, it was agreed that my father would arrive at the Sin household in 2 or 3 days. Now, it had dragged on for nearly half a month. Sinlin couldn't help but feel suspicious. Madam, has my father-in-law been delayed by something? Why haven't we seen him yet? I replied casually. He just sent a letter yesterday saying there was an urgent matter back home. So he had to turn back. He won't be coming for the time being. Sinlin and my mother-in-law both struggled to suppress their anger. So all this time, they'd been putting up with this humiliation for nothing. My father was bound to arrive sooner or later, so they dared not make a scene. But that meant they could take their time making up the shortfall in my dowry. I just never imagined that, for the sake of money, this mother and son would stoop so low. These past few days, I've been sleeping restlessly. After lunch, I was dozing on the daybed when several maids rushed in to report something. Madam, Someone from Chongqing Bank has come to ask you to come over. They say the old lady. When I rushed over to Chongqing Bank, the scene before me startled me so much I took 2 steps back. There sat my mother-in-law, right in the middle of the street, pounding her chest and wailing at the top of her lungs. What kind of bank is this? You're nothing but swindlers. You've swindled our family out of every last coin. How is an old woman like me supposed to feed myself? My daughter-in-law has just given birth. How is she supposed to feed the baby? If you don't return our money, you're signing our family's death warrant. Everyone, come and see. How dare such unreasonable bandits have the nerve to run a shop? The manager of Chongqing House saw me and bowed with a helpless expression. Madam Zhou, we simply cannot afford to cross your mother-in-law. The golden-threaded nanmu trees you planted in southern Xinjiang have already been planted. It will take at least a decade to recoup your investment. Yet your mother-in-law insists we refund the money. This not only violates Chongqing's established practices and makes it difficult for us to conduct business in the future, but it also leaves us utterly disgraced. With such a shameless old woman spouting nonsense right at our doorstep, Chongqing House's reputation is bound to suffer. The fact that the manager was still speaking to me with a friendly demeanor was already a sign of respect. I rubbed my aching temples, apologized politely first, then ordered the servants to drag my mother-in-law back inside. She refused to comply, pointing her finger at me and hurling insults. Zhou Jingshu, how dare you defy your mother-in-law? I'm warning you, if you don't make them return the money today, once you've given birth, I'll have my son kick you out onto the street. A country bumpkin who made her fortune off her son. How dare she boss me around in public? The daughter of the imperial tutor. Humph. Since you consider yourself the head of the household, you must be willing to recite sutras before the Buddha to pray for blessings and protect the Sin family from misfortune. Attendants, take the old lady to Jinya Nunnery to eat vegetarian meals and pray. Bring her back only when the Buddha has answered her prayers. Jinya Nunnery is no place for the faint of heart. It's remote and desolate, with few visitors, and those old nuns aren't exactly the most devout lot. Wherever there are women, there is strife. A haughty shrew like my mother-in-law will soon learn what it means to keep her head down and play second fiddle. The servants were initially hesitant to lay a hand on her, but I paid their monthly wages. It was only natural for them to do my bidding. So in the end, they forcibly shoved my mother-in-law into the carriage. I gave Chongqing House some extra silver as an apology, and that's how I settled the matter. When Sun Lin heard about this, he was aggressive the moment he returned to the mansion. Even if my mother was in the wrong, you shouldn't have sent her to a nunnery in front of so many people. Now that my colleagues all know about it, how am I supposed to hold my head up? He didn't mention that his own mother had thrown a tantrum and embarrassed him instead. He blamed me for not meekly accepting it. I said nothing. I simply clutched my stomach and furrowed my brow. And Sun Lin naturally fell silent. His wealth and prestige, as well as the favor of his beloved, all depend on me. How dare he do anything to me? Sure enough, Sun Lin didn't dare upset me and could only coax me to rest. But I lay in bed weeping. Husband, how dare you blame me? The real owner behind Chongqing is none other than the Chancellor himself. If my mother-in-law has tarnished Chongqing's reputation, how could the Chancellor possibly let you off the hook? I've been scheming for your sake all along. Yet you. Upon hearing that his mother had caused such a huge scandal, Sun Lin's face went pale. I clutched my stomach, gazing at the canopy above me and sighing deeply. My mother-in-law will certainly never forgive me. If we bring her back, how will she treat me? I haven't dared to close my eyes. I'm afraid I won't be able to keep this child. For the sake of this child, and for his own political career. Sun Lin immediately reassured me. Mother did go too far. It's best for her to go to Jinya Temple to pray and reflect. My lady, rest assured I will never let you suffer any injustice. With my mother-in-law's nagging gone, my days grew ever more comfortable. Since Sun Lin was now being sidelined and had no real duties to attend to, he might as well massage my shoulders and rub my legs. Tending to me, his wife. One day, while Lin was accompanying me on a shopping trip. A ragged old woman stumbled toward us. My child, please save your mother. I truly can't take it anymore. To my surprise, it was my mother-in-law, who had escaped from Jingye Temple. Her aged cheeks were deeply sunken, and she had grown noticeably thinner. It was clear she hadn't been getting enough to eat, not to mention her arms, which were covered in bruises. My child, those old hags aren't human. The moment I disobey them, they beat me. There are so many of them. They tear at my skin and pull my hair. I beg you, take me back home. Yet Lin, for the sake of the imperial consort and his own interests, was willing to disown even his own mother. He actually summoned guards to send his mother back to Jingye Temple, even dispatching extra men to keep her under strict surveillance. I found it amusing. If he were truly heartless, he wouldn't have spared her life until now. He intends to wait until I give birth, then silence me, before bringing his own mother back to live out her days in comfort. Such a dutiful son deserves to go to hell alongside his mother. Before I knew it, my due date was approaching. To avoid the complications of childbirth I'd faced in my previous life, I dragged my heavy body about daily to stay active, and I also arranged for father to come visit me. Father, who'd been worried for months, arrived at the Tsin household within a few days. Even though I'd warned him time and again not to let his emotions show, the moment he laid eyes on Lin, his anger flared uncontrollably. Fortunately, I reminded him just in time, so he managed to come up with a plausible excuse. Lin, why has my daughter lost so much weight? Is this how you, as her husband, take care of her? Lin smiled apologetically, and just then, it was time for dinner. The banquet was already prepared. On the surface, I brought my mother-in-law back out of consideration for Lin, to avoid arousing my father's suspicion. In reality, it was simply to ensure that the entire family met their end in a neat and orderly fashion. But my mother-in-law couldn't have imagined that. She still believed I had some respect for her as an elder and, at the very least, wouldn't dare to act too disgracefully in front of my father. My father wasn't in a hurry to eat. He held me back and chatted for quite a while, though it was really just to stall for time. I have invited a distinguished guest today. Without him, this feast would be rather lackluster. It wasn't until darkness had fully fallen that my father and I decided the time was right, and we ordered the meal to be served. Every dish was one my father favored, and the wine was brewed by my own hand. My mother-in-law raised her cup to toast my father. Father-in-law, don't you think that Tsin family has raised your daughter well? My father neither responded nor picked up his cup. He merely let out a half-hearted, cold laugh. Madam Tsin, there's no need to be so formal. Let's eat. My mother-in-law, her pride wounded, pursed her lips and fixed her gaze on the bowl of rice in front of my father. Lin, fearing he might give himself away, deliberately changed the subject to distract her. Yet he kept a close watch on when my father would pick up his chopsticks. It made sense. If they'd put the poison in the food, they'd risk poisoning themselves. If they put it in the wine, they'd be reluctant to waste such a fine brew. Only the rice bowl had been brought in at the last minute by a maiden that was the least likely place to arouse suspicion. What a venomous pair this mother and son are. It seems their training at Jingye Temple hasn't been enough. My father feigned complete obliviousness as he picked up a pair of chopsticks and scooped up a mouthful of rice from the edge of the bowl. Lin and his mother appeared unconcerned, but their eyes were practically popping out of their sockets. It was as if, the moment my father swallowed that mouthful of rice, they would instantly be vindicated. But just as those few grains of rice were about to enter my father's mouth, a shrill cry pierced the silence. His Majesty has arrived. The Emperor's arrival caught the Tsin family mother and son completely off guard. They knelt tremblingly to greet His Majesty, while my father, as the imperial tutor, merely stood to pay his respects. The Emperor was quite young, and when facing my father, he set aside his imperial dignity, appearing as nothing more than a humble student eager to learn. Master Zhou, it has been many years since you retired to your hometown. I have truly missed you. My father, too, was moved to tears. Though he had long since left the court, he had witnessed the emperor's benevolent rule, proof that his past tireless efforts had not been in vain. Though the Xin family was not of high rank, the emperor, out of respect for my father, treated Xin Lin with great kindness. Seeing that we were in the midst of a meal, he graciously deigned to take the seat of honor. That was originally my father's seat. Seeing that His Majesty intended to stay for the meal, Xin Lin was both honored and terrified. He hurriedly ordered the maids to bring fresh bowls and chopsticks, but His Majesty waved his hand. Minister Xin, you may not know this, but in my youth I was often the target of assassination attempts. Even having palace attendants taste my food could not prevent it. It was Master Zhou who risked his life to protect me. Whether it was a pastry, a bowl of water, or even a cup, bowl, or set of chopsticks, he would use them himself first before giving them to me. I may despise anyone, but I could never despise Master Zhou. Xin Lin's face grew even paler. Seeing the emperor lift the bowl of poisoned rice, he hurriedly looked at the matron. The matron was also panicking. But when she saw the emperor about to pick up his chopsticks, she steeled herself and rushed forward to snatch the bowl from his hands. No, this rice is contaminated, it can't be eaten. Taking advantage of the struggle, she slammed the bowl to the ground. Only then did she breathe a sigh of relief, feigning an apology. Though the emperor was furious, he did not wish to quarrel with a mere village woman like her. I, however, crouched down with some effort to pick up the shattered porcelain shards. Madam, how could you be so disrespectful to His Majesty? Even if you wanted a new bowl of rice, why did you have to smash the bowl as well? The old woman stammered, unable to form a reply. But His Majesty, prompted by my words, looked down at the shards at his feet. Before he could speak, my father ordered his men to pick up the rice and the porcelain bowl. Without even testing for poison, they carried it straight to Xin Lin. Minister Xin, since this meal comes from your household, I'll have to trouble you to test it for poison. Xin Lin turned deathly pale and shook his head timidly. The rice is already contaminated. Perhaps we should have a maid serve a fresh bowl. My father said nothing, merely pushing the rice a little closer to him, causing Xin Lin to recoil in fear. His reaction made it clear to His Majesty that there was no need for a poison test. He immediately ordered that Xin family mother and Santo be taken to the imperial prison to await the imperial physician's examination before a final decision was made. The mother and son's legs gave out completely, and they were dragged away like dead dogs. I quickly intercepted the imperial guards and knelt before His Majesty. Xin Lin thought I was going to plead for him and perked up immediately. Madam, please intercede for me. I truly never intended to assassinate the emperor. He didn't intend to assassinate the emperor, but he did intend to kill my father. How thick-skinned must he be to say such a thing? I stroked my belly and knelt before His Majesty, saying, Your Majesty, I must report that Xin Lin has been having an affair with the imperial consort. Zhou Jingshu, shut your mouth. Xin Lin's scream was even more piercing than his earlier pleas for mercy. He could die, but he couldn't bear to let the imperial consort be dragged down with him. How could I possibly let him have his way? Your Majesty, allow me to report. Last Mid-Autumn Festival, this servant attended the palace banquet with Xin Lin. The imperial consort and Xin Lin conspired to drug the wine served to Your Majesty and the servant. If Your Majesty cannot recall, you may check the records of the night's attendance that night. You lodged in the imperial consort's quarters. My husband and I were in a daze and committed acts contrary to human decency. Before dawn, Xin Lin secretly escorted me out of the palace. Xin Lin lied, claiming that he was the one who shared my bed on that mid-autumn night. For the 3 months before and after that, he never touched me. He did this to ensure this child was of Your Majesty's bloodline, so he could present it to the imperial consort and help her vie for favor. Even though my words sounded so absurd, His Majesty did not dismiss them as nonsense. Instead, he swayed slightly as if deeply shaken. He turned to the elderly eunuch standing nearby, who lowered his eyes and replied, "Your Majesty, the imperial consort and Lady Zhou are indeed in the same stage of pregnancy. She went to the summer palace to rest as soon as she became pregnant, and no one has seen her belly since. If she truly bribed the imperial physicians to falsely report a pregnancy, it is not impossible." His Majesty refused to believe it and waved his hand forcefully. "Impossible. This must be a misunderstanding. Zhou Jingshu, do you know what punishment awaits one who deceives the sovereign?" I bowed my head once more. The imperial bloodline is unique. The blood test for paternity never fails. Whether my words are true or false will be clear once the child in my womb is born. My father chimed in at the right moment. Given his character, his words could not possibly be false. His Majesty could bear it no longer and was supported by eunuchs to keep from collapsing. "Go. Summon the imperial consort back, along with the imperial physicians who attended her. None of them are to die. I demand to see them alive." Upon hearing these words, Sinlin's last shred of hope was shattered. He slumped to the ground, his vacant eyes filled with nothing but fear. His family, the Xin clan, and the imperial consort were all utterly finished. While waiting for the imperial consort's arrival, the atmosphere was awkward and eerie. His Majesty held my father in high esteem, having been taught by him since childhood. He was bound to uphold the rules. Yet he went and committed that act with the master's own daughter, a married woman, no less. Though he is the sovereign, the emperor now squirmed like a cat on a hot tin roof, not daring to meet my father's gaze, much less mine. I, for one, didn't have nearly as many qualms as he did. "Your Majesty, this is the fault of Sinlin and the imperial consort. You need not blame yourself." Perhaps the emperor had too many doubts weighing on his mind. After hesitating for a long time, he finally asked, "This matter, how did you find out?" I simply replied that I had overheard Sinlin and my mother-in-law discussing it in private, and I wiped away a tear as I spoke. "I married the wrong man. My husband has eyes and a heart only for his Chower. Even in his dreams, he murmurs her name." Chower was the imperial consort's maiden name, known to very few. The fact that I could hear it from Sinlin's mouth only further proved the depth of their relationship. His Majesty's face darkened, and he said nothing more until the heavily pregnant imperial consort was brought in. Though her belly was large, it was far smaller than what a full-term pregnancy should be. The eunuch exchanged a glance with the imperial physicians, and they took turns taking the consort's pulse as she trembled like a leaf. The conclusion was inevitable. "Your Majesty, the consort was never pregnant to begin with. She merely took medicine that causes qi stagnation, which caused her abdomen to swell." The imperial consort knelt on the ground, kowtowing and begging for mercy. "Your Majesty, I know I have erred. Please spare my life. Your Majesty." The emperor never could have imagined that his beloved imperial consort had not only been involved with a court official but had also dared to feign pregnancy to deceive him. He raised his hand slightly and waved it away, uttering softly, "Execute her," before the consort could even cry out. The imperial guards had already drawn their swords and struck. My father covered my eyes, afraid I might be frightened. I patted the back of his hand to reassure him. His daughter was not that fragile. Just then, the imperial physician tasked with testing the rice for poison finally stopped his work. "Your Majesty, this bowl of rice contains blood-sealing throat, a rare poison from the southern frontier. That is why I was delayed. I beg your forgiveness." This poison had come within a hair's breadth of taking my father's life and within a hair's breadth of plunging the entire nation into chaos, whether for the crime of regicide or for plotting against the imperial preceptor. Sinlin was doomed. Realizing that my father had nearly been poisoned to death and might even have died a wrongful death, the emperor was filled with dread, and his hatred for Sinlin grew even more intense. "Sinlin, you have the audacity." The calmer his tone, the more it revealed the emperor's furious rage. As he was dragged away, Sunlin had already sunk into such despair that he didn't even cry out for mercy. What awaited the mother and son was a capital punishment worse than death. With the criminal dealt with, it was time to consider my situation. My father had long pleaded with His Majesty not to have me enter the palace as a concubine, but now that I was carrying His Majesty's child, the future mother of a prince, what status to grant me truly posed a dilemma for His Majesty. I, however, felt no such dilemma. Your Majesty, this servant no, this humble daughter is willing to enter the palace. My father tried to dissuade me, but I shook my head to signal him to be patient. Father, you did not want your daughter to enter the palace before because you feared I would suffer in the palace intrigues. But I am no longer an innocent young girl, since self-preservation and underhanded struggles are unavoidable wherever I go. I might as well go to a place where I can carry on our family's glory. Besides, as a mother, how could I bear to be separated from my child? The emperor felt no romantic affection for me, but he could ensure that my son and I would live safely within the palace. He immediately swore a solemn oath to put my father's mind at ease. Though my father was reluctant, he had no better solution, and so I was brought into the palace and appointed as a Jiwa rank neither high nor low. Although the other consorts didn't think much of me, I didn't care. I devoted myself to nurturing my pregnancy every day, until one late night, my labor finally began. With the imperial physicians by my side, my delivery went smoothly, even without a blood test. It was clear that the son I gave birth to looked exactly like His Majesty. This was the first time I had seen this child in my 2 lifetimes. The joy of motherhood brought tears to my eyes. In this life, I could finally protect my own flesh and blood myself. The young prince was confirmed to be His Majesty's bloodline. His Majesty was overjoyed as well. He doubled my allowance and the number of palace attendants, insisting that I be well cared for. It wasn't until after my confinement period that His Majesty mentioned Sunlin. I feared the bloodshed might bring you ill luck, so I held off on punishing them. Now, at last, I have no reservations. They were sentenced to death by slow slicing, to be carried out over 3 days at Kaishaku, with His Majesty's special permission. I went to witness the execution in person. Sunlin and his mother had their mouths gagged and were securely bound to pillars. The executioner, sharpening a small knife no bigger than the palm of his hand, was about to begin by slicing open their eyelids. Just before the blade fell, Sunlin caught sight of me. He cast a pleading, choked back glance my way, hoping against hope that I might show mercy and let him die quickly. Alas, I would only make him regret it even more. I watched with my own eyes as the executioner sliced off Sunlin's eyelids, followed by his nose bridge, then slowly separated his lips and forehead, gradually peeling his entire face away, hearing his piercing screams muffled in his mouth. I couldn't help but recall the agony of being burned alive in my previous life. I had finally avenged myself. All that pain had been repaid 1,000-fold. Only when I grew weary of watching did I return to the palace. My son slept peacefully, and his wet nurse sat quietly by his side. Such a serene and peaceful scene stood in stark contrast to the horrors at Kaishaku. At my son's 100-day celebration, my father wept bitterly. It's my fault for being so useless. I can't give you anything. Money is needed everywhere in the palace. If you ever need more, just tell me. I burst out laughing. Does father not know? The mountain I purchased in the southern frontier with my dowry has yielded a gold mine. I have discussed it with His Majesty. He will dispatch troops to mine it, and we will split the gold equally. This is, of course, a win-win situation. And His Majesty will hold me in even higher esteem because of it. Those concubines who used to look down on me are now green with envy. Everyone says I'm the most confident empress in the court. Not only do I have money, but I also have my father's backing, the emperor's affection, and my adorable son. The best days are yet to come for me. Zhou Jingshu. The story has come to an end. Thank you all for sticking with me. See you in the next one.